Welcome to Call of Your Soul.
Welcome to Call of Your Soul. This is Dan Ellis, along with my co host, Amy Piper, and our special guest today, Chuck Cogliandro. And before we dive in for today's episode, I just want to invite you, if you're able to do so, just coming to a place of center and bring the eyes to a close. And just sitting, feeling your breath, and just preparing yourself to receive. And inviting a bit deeper breath in. And exhale, release. All right, for today, have our guest with us, Chuck Cogliandro. And Chuck, if you maybe just give us a brief introduction about you and the work that you're currently doing, and then we can segue back to how you got there.
Thanks, Dan, and thanks, Amy Bear, for inviting me to join you today. I appreciate it. Um, the work I'm doing today may seem disparate at first, but there's definitely a deep thread that runs through it all and connects it all together. Um, I'm a musician, been more or less full-time musician for more than 30 years. Um, my concentration for more than 30 years has been in West African drumming music and the history and the culture that goes along with that, mostly from the Maninka people of West Africa, Guinea, and Mali primarily. I do a lot of teaching, performing, repair drums, learned how to carve the drums early on. Don't haven't been had time to carve the drums in many years. And also in music, that's one of the crossover points because I do therapeutic drumming and therapeutic rhythm sessions at a number of different places with different communities. Um, then there is the healing practice I share with my wife in the method of family constellations. We trained together for 3 years with our primary teachers, Peter and Jamie Faust, who are in Boston, and their practice is called the Constellation approach. We call ours Constellation Journeys. And then along with that, there's some men's work that I do. I belong to a community that meets every summer for a couple weeks in West Virginia, and that's called the Hero's Journey Foundation. That was established by Michael Merbosh, and he was a teacher at the Barbara Brennan School, which is another training that I went through, a 4-year training. Amy Bear is very familiar with it as well. Um, and then, in addition to that, there is some social justice, racial healing work that I do in a couple of different communities. One of them is called Coming to the Table. It's a national organization with chapters in many cities across the country. And my wife Kelly and I, we helped co-found the local Atlanta group of that in 2016. It's a deliberately, consciously multiracial community dedicated to healing the legacies of slavery and racism as they still exist in U.S. society. And then I also do consulting and facilitation with another uh, company called I Change Collaborative, and the president is Danielle Stewart, a good friend of mine. And we co-facilitate groups together, professional groups, educational groups, and the like. So I guess those are the main branches where my work takes me right now.
Yeah, and it's quite a lot of branches, and it seems pretty dynamic, but I am picking up on the common thread, between all the various branches that you're putting life into. And just one quick question before we dive back in history with you, but is that last work with the social justice, are you using some of the family constellation work to as the modality for healing?
Not really. I would say we have touched on it and introduced it in the Coming to the Table community. That is a really good question, though, and one of the reasons we found coming to the table, Kelly and I, we had been through the training in family constellations. We were becoming more and more acutely aware of the unresolved wounding of racism and slavery in the United States. And, we had facilitated numerous constellations that dealt with enslavement in a family's lineage. And we literally said, like, we would like to find, other people, other communities that we don't know about that might benefit from this approach. And it was shortly after that we heard about coming to the table, and they were having their national gathering in 2016 in Harrisonburg, Virginia. And we were on a long driving trip, or we were going to make a long driving trip for our summer vacation, actually going all the way to Newfoundland. And it was more or less right on the way. And we have friends in Charlottesville that we stayed with. And yeah, we have done I think it was about a 2 hour workshop using family constellations at one of the national conferences with coming to the table. So yeah, we've introduced it there, but it's probably not the primary way that we work there.
Okay, got it. No, that's really interesting, and of course we're going to come back and explore more in each of these branches as we kind of go through your story. So maybe let's go ahead and take a jump back into the past. And you're an electrical engineer by trade. Back up in Michigan in the late '80s. So I guess let's start with what made you decide to choose that path, and then maybe take us into where you started to run aground, with being an engineer as opposed to, the tree of life and all the branches that you're now putting your work into now.
Wow, those are great images. I love it. Running aground and then the tree of life now. Yeah, I see myself like crashing into the bank of a river underneath a great big tree and being stuck there for
Oh
years.
no.
Yeah. No, that's great. Those are great images. I haven't really worked with it quite like that before. I was fortunate to be blessed with a good brain. I, achieved very well in school, straight A student. Um, School was not that difficult for me. And I did get a lot of juice and a lot of energy and a lot of, validation from getting all A's and teachers, giving me attention. But I loved reading from a young age, and I found, ways to explore, the entire universe through books and reading. And so, um, my family really emphasized the importance of education. That's a fantastic thing to do for a parent, to give to a child. But it also, in my case, probably was taken a little too far. So when I, expressed any interest in music and especially drumming, that's what I always listened to in music, and that's what excited me. That's what I was drawn to. There was not support given to that, and then after time there was actual, negative feedback given to that from my parents. And so from this stage of life, looking back, now I can see, that was my dad's way of loving me. He wanted me to have the best life that he could see for me or that he could imagine for me. So he wanted me to go into engineering. Great career, um, really great status in society, stable. Once you get an engineering degree, more or less, you can work in a lot of different areas and fields. So that's what he pushed me toward, pretty much with everything he had. And he was fearful that my interest in music would take me away from that. It would be a distraction, and I would be wasting my time, and what he saw as my, academic talents. So that's where I started to separate from him, more or less energetically and emotionally. um, and I just kind of kept that interest in music and drumming to myself. Some of my friends started playing drum set. My friend Christopher had one, and that was the first time I ever played, and it was amazing, in high school. But I never really felt like I had a choice. So that was what I did. I went toward engineering, coming out of high school, even though I loved all the humanities, literature, psychology, anthropology. all of those things, and especially music. But I just thought, okay, engineering, that's what I'm going to do. And hated my school, from the minute I got
Mm.
there. It was stressful, and I just used a lot of willpower and discipline. And I was also in a fraternity, Lambda Chi Alpha, very, very close friendships. I'm still really close friends with a lot of the guys in my fraternity. In fact, I was texting with one of them today. I had a long phone call with another one of them yesterday. So, yeah, that was a real blessing in my life. So we all, struggled together and made those kind of bonds that, you do when you go through, really challenging stuff together with a group. And I graduated on time. The blessing in that program was it was a co-op school. It was General Motors Institute. It's now called Kettering University. It's in Flint, Michigan. But I would go to school for 12 weeks and then go to a General Motors unit and work as a co-op student for 12 weeks. But you earn enough money to pay for your tuition and your room and
Mm.
board. So I graduated with zero college debt, and I had some money saved up. I didn't own a house, wasn't married, didn't have any kids. So I was pretty free. From the outside, it looked like I had a fantastic path in front of me to be an engineer, but I was dying inside. I really got depressed, tried everything I could think of to make it work for me. And the money was great. I was comfortable from that respect. But this energy, this longing for music and drumming, it wouldn't go away. And I'm thinking now of something I read in a book by Elaine Pagels about the Gnostic Gospels.
Mm-hmm.
That's the title of the book, the Gnostic Gospels. But in the book of Thomas, there's a saying that says, "If you bring forth what is in you, then it will likely save you. If you do not bring forth what is within you, it may destroy you." So I didn't read that until many years later, but that was pretty fitting. I really got withdrawn. I was starting to dissociate. Um, Part of me would be looking down on myself from above and wondering, like, why are you doing this? You really don't care about this. It's not meaningful. So yeah, I was really splitting, and eventually went to a psychologist for some therapy. And all he had to do was reflect to me that whenever I talked about music and drumming, especially, is when I came
Mm.
alive. And that's what I needed. That's what I hadn't had in my family and my family system. And that's what it took. It changed everything. And so maybe a year after I started therapy with him, I decided I gotta leave. I just have to leave. I don't have a clear path in front of me. I just know that I don't want this. And that was one of the crucial points, along the path for me. And so much life force was liberated, and I was alive and I was free. I felt young again, where I felt like, the bent over, wizened man at the end of life, that carried this huge burden. And I also have been really influenced by a book called Zen and the Art of Motorcycle
Mm-hmm.
Maintenance by Robert Pirsig. And I'd read it, I think, in ninth grade, again in high school, and I read it again in college. And I had not ridden a motorcycle before. And I got a small motorcycle and outgrew that in about 3 rides. And then I got a big touring motorcycle. And I took that summer, it was 1988, and I took off. I was gone. I split in a good way this time, and did some practice runs, loaded up with all the gear I wanted. Ended up spending 4 months on the road, all over the East Coast of New England. Went to Canada, toured around some up there. Had cousins in Montreal. Came back home to Detroit to change tires and do some maintenance on the bike, and then went west. And I ended up kind of probably intuitively following almost the same path that Robert Pirsig did in that book. The upper, states, the northern plains, Minnesota and the Dakotas, and Montana, all the way out to the west coast. And it was truly the bliss of a hero's journey. And in those, the steps of the hero's journey initiatory cycle, for anybody that's read Joseph Campbell's work on that, or Michael Meade is another writer, scholar, healer that I'm really influenced by. We if we step on this path, we have to separate from everything we know. We have to really go dive completely into the unknown. And that's where we'll have trials, but we'll also have people and figures and divas show up to help us along the way. And that's what it turned into. It just was this wide open bliss for 4 months, and I was in the right place and I was protected. Yellowstone was even burning down that summer, and I rode through Yellowstone while like active fires were going on, and that was really intense. So anyway, that adventure, all of a sudden one day, was like, psh, it's gone, it's over. I was literally on the West Coast. I was like, okay, that was what I had to do, and I'm ready to go home now. So I started taking lessons, drum set lessons, and I started driving limos, and that was a great job to have while I was getting started as a musician. And did that for about 3 years, and then I was ready for a big change. And 92, moved to Atlanta, and that started a whole another chapter.
Can I ask you a quick
So,
question, Chuck? So,
yeah.
um, you, so I read this quote in Joseph Campbell's Thousand Faces of God, and he said that the call to adventure signifies that destiny has summoned the hero and transferred his spiritual center of gravity from within the pale of his society to a zone unknown. And that kind of sounds like that sort of, to me, like with when you break out and go on the motorcycle trip, really sort of embodies kind of that process that you went through. And I just kind of want to highlight um, when he uses the word pale of society, because when you, and this has been my experience, and I'm wondering if it's the same for you, once you sort of awaken spiritually, to stay in something that feels like it's not really your calling, it feels kind of pale and it feels kind of dull, and it's like you're saying, you're kind of, you'd be dying inside if you stayed with that. I'm just wondering if that was sort of the same experience for you as you're breaking out.
Yeah, those are great ways, very spot on ways to describe that. Yeah, it was scary to me, when I would experience the disassociation, and I don't think I ever literally considered suicide, but I guess I just had to hang in there because something had to get better, something had to change. So again, that was a lot of willpower, and it was all part of the process for me. I mean, it was all, I had to experience all of it. I had to go through all of it. But yeah, it was painful. It was scary. I felt isolated. And that's another famous Joseph Campbell quote. When you step on this path, you think you're going to be isolated from the entire world, but in reality,
Hmm.
you're going to be connected to the entire world.
Yeah.
And that was my experience. That's what happened. And I know young people, we all have an opportunity to go through this. I know mine was pretty dramatic, and my calling, my longing was so clear. And it took me some time to kind of get off of my righteous high horse and stop expecting other people to have it so clear. I know it's not now. I know for a lot of people, it just isn't that clear. Um, and it doesn't have to always be external.
Mm.
It doesn't have to be something big that you change in the external world. It can be a spiritual path that you get on, where you leave behind a lack of spiritual path that you had, or a spiritual path that isn't working for you, but it has to be authentic. That's the other huge thing that Joseph Campbell and Michael Meade emphasize. It has to be your path. You cannot be enamored with somebody else's path and think, "Oh, that's the way for me to go too." It will not work that way. That way can lead to ruin. It really has to be your genuine path. And for me, I I didn't know it was drumming at the time. Honestly, had just like a completely, undefined sense of it being drumming, but I didn't know what that looked like. I had no models for it. I just knew I had to break out of what I was doing. So, and I guess in a deeper sense of, Christianity, it was a death and rebirth that I had to go through in this life, to be reborn into a bigger life that I needed, that I was supposed to have.
Can I ask you a question about you spoke of authenticity that Joseph Campbell or Michael Mead or someone like that had said was a big part of the journey and an essential part. So for people who are listening, some people may not really know, like, how do I know that something is authentic to me? How would you answer that question?
Wow.
I mean, once you find that, then you know, you can feel it, you can, but if you haven't
Yes.
connected with that yet, or you haven't been aware of it, it can be a really tough learning.
I'm not going to say this is like my best answer or clear answer, but this is just what's coming to me right now. There's kind of maybe two stages to it. For me, that trip included a lot of solitude, a lot of being with myself in the best possible way. Not in like, yeah, I spent years when I would be by myself and I was in an anxious, spinning kind of mind. Like, what am I going to do? This is horrible. This journey, those 4 months on the road, was really blissful. And I really was just with myself in a really open, accepting, loving way. And there was nothing wrong for me or
Mm.
with me or in the universe. So I would say, time in solitude, time with oneself, just reflective time, however that works for you. Maybe it's not, by yourself. There's lots of different ways to, have deep reflective time. So that's part of it. And then the other part is just taking the first tiny step into what you feel like it might be. You might not know, but take a course in something, take, a lesson with somebody, if you have that urge or that longing or an idea, you know, I also hold this kind of idea that spirit meets us halfway.
Mm.
When
Mhm.
we activate something on our path, if it's genuine, we don't have to do the entire thing. And I think that's Joseph Campbell's idea of helpers will appear along the path. Spirit will meet us halfway. And I've always, since I made that break and that complete change, I've trusted that. So something might be unknown, something might be really scary, something might be risky. But if I try it, I'm going to get information back. It's in the trying, it's in the activating, and effort. It's in, initiating something. And then you find out. There were times, I remember this time, I was still playing drum set. And for people in Atlanta, Creative Loafing is kind of alternative newspaper here. And I don't know if they still do, but back in those days, musicians and bands would advertise for musicians that they needed for their band, or people just wanted to get together to jam with people or whatever. And so there was a group that needed a drummer. I went and met with them. They gave me a cassette tape. They said, learn these 15 songs. So I spent a whole weekend working really hard on it. Went back, auditioned, and they said, "Yeah, great. All right, we're gonna have our first rehearsal this Friday. Come back." So I went back again. I'm so excited. I'm practicing even harder and making charts. And I get there, and they said, "You still got that tape?" I said, "Yeah." "All right, we need the tape back." Give them the tape, and they said, "So actually, our old drummer came back, so we're not going to need."
Mm.
And I was furious. And I got my drums because I need to get my drums out of their, rehearsal space. And then I just told them off. And I said, "It's really unprofessional and this sucks. And I don't think you're going to get very far." I just teed up whatever I felt like saying. And I drove away and I was really discouraged. And fortunately, I stayed with myself and I stayed with my longing, and I switched it around. Instead of it seeing it as a failure, I kind of took it as some vitamins, or some fertilizer. And I said, there's probably going to be more of this. And this is spirit giving me a little test to see if I'm serious, to see if I'm
Mhm.
really committed to this, because commitment means you got to stay with it even when it's tough. And that did turn some things. And then I it was like that was like an R&B funk band, which was going to be really fun. But then I got a call from a country and western band. Not a style of music I'm into and really knew much about, but it was similar. But I had to learn even more songs. But they liked me and I got hired. And they had a contract with a lounge and a Holiday Inn on Delk Road in Marietta. And it was a great setup. And so that worked out. So that's how I looked at that experience. It was like, I'm getting a challenge right now. I'm getting a test from spirit. Do you really mean it? Like, we're going to see how you react to this. So it became less personal about, what the guys in that band did. And for all I know, they went on to win Grammys. I have no idea. If they did, God bless them. But yeah, I'm thankful for that, that experience, and that I was able to turn that around like that.
So one of the things that I hear is underneath, as a thread underneath all of this, is that sometimes it's a dramatic um, shift, a dramatic move, and sometimes it's just a baby step. And it's often going to be just kind of like taking a little baby step here and a baby step there and testing the waters to see if this is really for you. And when it is for you, then you find yourself committed enough to keep moving in that direction. And then at some point, spirit meets you. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, I like that. I think that's a good summary.
Cool.
There was an interesting parallel I had to Chuck's experience where I was working with a therapist, and he actually used Joseph Campbell as some using some reference points, and that was my first introduction to his work. And then I remember like my last session with him, I was kind of asking him like, all right, well, how do I know what the next step is? How do I know what to do next? And he just had this one short, quick line that I've always referenced since then, and I think it comes from Joseph Campbell in one of his books or one of his lectures. He said, "Just follow your bliss."
Hmm.
hmm
And I thought that was just such a great sort of like lighthouse, right? Sort of use that as a very like non-specific but very concrete way to sort of orient what your experience needs to be. And it also is sort of the pinnacle of the eight limbs of yoga, right? So, the eighth limb is bliss and raptured and a wonderful, beautiful experience that's beyond comprehension and that you can explain. So I just thought that was a great way to kind of summarize it. Um, Chuck, I've got a question for you. So it's really interesting. I've known a lot of people that do healing work, and it seems like music is a very integral part of like them learning and understanding how to play music, to them then evolving and becoming into their healing work. And I'm just curious why you think that might be the case, and maybe how music has been a part of your spiritual journey and also fueled part of your healing work.
hmm Yeah, it's a great thing to consider and reflect on for sure. My first kind of large overview response is that music pretty immediately and viscerally makes us part of something bigger. So whether we're playing alone at home, playing a piano piece, playing a flute, playing guitar, singing, we're connecting to something archaic and ancient, as well as something right here in this moment simultaneously.
Mm.
So that's, we're going to expand, to do that. We're going to bring together our physical body, because we have to be in motion to create sound. We're going to bring in our emotional body right away, because music is nothing but a flow, and emotion is a flow. And we're going to bring in our spiritual body that wants to connect to others. So I think all of those things happen simultaneously when we play music, whatever that is. For me, I remember as a kid, kind of like scuffing my heels as I walked to school and back home. I don't know why I did it. It just put more rhythm into my walk, and I would wear down the heels. This is when kids still wore dress shoes to school. Had my little Buster Brown dress shoes,
Yeah.
lace up. It was probably first grade. Um, and oh yeah, and then we would change into our gym shoes, when we got to school. But yeah, I remember just like that feedback from the ground, from the earth. Like, I'm here. And it was probably like I was still somewhat grounded as a little kid. I became much less grounded as a young adult. But there was something in, like, I'm already creating rhythm. I wasn't thinking about it that way at the time. But that's something I was doing. And I guess I was probably connecting to some larger flow. I don't know. I don't know if that answers your question, but that's kind of where it took me. I can also share this, and this is something I teach in family constellations when I'm leading a workshop or doing training. In the method of family constellations that we practice, we are working with multiple dimensions of the family and ancestral field at the same time. So when a person comes to us with a challenge, we're working with that person as an individual, but they are nested within a larger field. They're nested within the family of origin field,
Mhm.
and that has a coherence and an identity to it. And then that family of origin is in nested in ancestral lineages through the mother's lineage and the father's lineage, right? And then there's a much larger, extended family field. And then there's a deep ancestral field that extends back to the field of humanity, if you will. And then there's the cosmos
Mhm.
beyond that. So the
Yeah.
music that I love and have been immersed in for so long is so similar to that. It's multiple simultaneous rhythm phrases being played together, in coherence, in a coherent way. And I was trained by that study, because when I started out, if you play drum set in a band, you're the main, I don't know, producer of rhythm. And other
Hmm.
instrumentalists in the band, they don't focus on the sense of rhythm the same way a drum set player does. Some, like a rhythm guitar player, that's so important that they have a good feel for time and rhythm. If they don't, the music won't come as alive as it might. The bass player, locking in with the drum set player, that's a good foundation. If that's happening, almost everything else is going to feel good. In West African drumming music, you're going to have up to 9 or 10 simultaneous rhythms being played. So when Westerners experience that, it's mystifying. It is like it can be a full body experience. And the first time I experienced it, yeah, it it changed the cells in my body. It just lifted me up. I was so expanded, and it just electrified me. And I had to go back every week to learn more. It was a dance class in Decatur that happened every Saturday with the Uhuru dancers, and it's still going now, more than 30 years later. So there's such a sympathetic resonance in those things. And so when I came to family constellations, after having been so deeply trained by West African music and that simultaneity, it was so natural to me. So in a constellation, I can hold all those energy fields simultaneously, and it's like a piece of music to me. And I get to walk around in it and feel, what's in harmony and what's not in harmony, what needs some support, what's too strong and it needs to be modulated a little bit. Um, so yeah, that's been really, really fortunate for me. And I guess it's like it's like another step along the same path,
Hmm.
from going into drumming, which was rock and roll music, had some depth to it, but not everything I was looking for. West African music, that had more depth than I even imagined was possible. And then going into healing through the Barbara Brennan School, that's very multidimensional. And then Family Constellations, which was the one that I'd really been waiting to find.
Yeah, and it's like the the tool and the skill set that you developed with studying the West African drumming kind of gave you the ability to understand how to work with the multidimensionality that you experience in the family constellations.
Hmm. Yes.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Amy, did you want to ask something?
Well, I mean, first of all, I just wanted to comment on how amazing all that is. It makes me think of the nesting dolls, when you talk about and I do lineage work in my own way too, and I just really appreciate how you described those many different levels of the ancestral uh,
Mhm.
lineages and how they hold us. Also, I just wanted to comment on, I just think it fits here that somatics is something that shows how vibration, music, sound uh, affects
Mhm.
water and or sand. And there's a really beautiful example of that for anybody who wants to look at it. Deva Premal and Miten, her partner, they sing mantra all over the world. And there's one where they show, I can't remember if it's water or sand in this example, but they're singing Gayatri mantra. And of course, mantras are sung over and over and over. And throughout that process, originally the patterns are shifting and changing as the vibration continues, as the mantra is repeated. Those patterns become clearer and clearer and clearer. And I remember the first time I watched that, I love Gayatri Mantra, I sing it all the time. And I was thinking, that's what is happening in my
Mm.
cells. That my cells are made of water. This is what's happening in my cells when I'm singing this mantra and listening to it. And my mind just went, "Ooh." It was just an amazing thing. So there's just the aspect of sound as vibration and what it does to our bodies on a very subtle level.
Yes, absolutely. And you can think of a human being as uh, interconnected systems. On the physical level, we got the circulatory system, we have the respiratory system, you
Mhm.
have the lymphatic system. All these things, none of them are primary over the others. They're different, but
Mhm.
they're all coherently in harmony. When we're in health, when we're in good health, working together.
Yeah.
Amy Bear, was there a time? I'm having a memory now thinking of that mantra, and it might have been that exact one. Did I like break down like the odd time signature of that? It seemed like at one time I was showing you how it's like a 13 count, and there's like a phrase of 6 and 7 that repeats. Do you remember that?
I don't remember that, but it sounds very interesting. Maybe you'll do that for me again one day.
I will. I will. Yeah. I don't know. I don't remember what we were doing, but yeah, I do have that memory, and I think it was David Primal.
Mhm. Yeah, she's my favorite. I
That's super
really love
cool.
her. Yeah.
So, with respect to rhythm and how that changes one's experience with the dimensionality of the music, maybe Chuck, let's kind of go back to your experience. I guess that was around 1992, playing in a band in the Atlanta area, and just kind of talk about what you experienced there and then the difference, in playing in a band and kind of having a less dimensional music versus what you've experienced in the West African drumming. I think you were sort of starting to elucidate the difference, in the dimensionality of that type of music.
Hmm. Sure. So, yeah, I mean, I grew up listening to pop music, and I still love it today. Um, American pop music, funk, R&B. I once I found the West African music, which was the early '90s, I just got so absorbed into it. I kind of stopped following what's popular in American music. And music is made extremely differently today. It's a lot of it is a solo artist. The producer has so much influence, and a lot of it is very commercial and produced and marketed, and people
Yeah.
love it. It's great. Um, there's something about the West African music. First of all, it's so much older than any of the pop music that we've ever heard. The dances, the songs, the rhythms, as far as anybody knows, the djembe drum, which is the drum that I play the most, has origins in the 13th century. So close to
Mm.
800 years. And the artists that I've had the great fortune to study with, Brother Yusef Crowder, an African American man, my first teacher, always give him honor and praise. He's in Atlanta. We're still good friends. In fact, I just ordered a book that I'm going to give him. He was my Sabu. That's what is in West Africa. Sabu is a person who helps you move from one stage of life to the next. So he really was, without any formal agreement between us, he was the person who initiated me into that music and the drumming and that culture. Stone Montgomery, my second teacher, learned so much from him, another African American man. And then 1997, I think approximately, Mohammed Jabi from Guinea, West Africa. He was my first African teacher, and I studied very closely with him for years. um, the way that they hold the music and then the way that they share it and teach it there's a transmission in it.
Mhm.
There's something so profound in it because they received it from their teacher, who received it from their teacher, and it's a lineage. And so that lineage is very present. And so anyone who's taken by this music, it becomes so much of their life, like it has for me. You have such a respect for it that you want to share it with the same respect. So that, and before I came to the family constellations and the ancestral healing in that method, I was also getting taught about lineage from my teachers in music. So that is possible and available in Western music and pop music. I'm sure it is, but it's not a primary quality. You can study with a teacher and learn how to play drum set and go into a rock band, and you can get some of that transmission of the lineage, but it's not as old and it's not, to me, as deep and profound as what I've been really fortunate to receive. So that's one of the differences. Another one is a lot of pop music and rock and roll and Western music is it's an entertainment.
Mm.
It's for lifting the spirit, lifting the environment, amusement. A lot of times people go and get altered, through drinking alcohol or taking substances, and they have fantastic, memorable experiences. The West African music has more of a cultural identity to it because it is so old. And I never portray myself as anything other than, a man from the United States who was born into the white racial identity. So I don't have any, confusion about that. But I've been to Guinea, West Africa on study trips and been very, very close to my teachers. And the music, there are times when it is an entertainment, when people just want to get together and have fun. But mostly it's about keeping people strong and keeping them together and keeping them connected to their ancestors and their ancestral lineage.
Mm.
So in the oldest tradition, rhythms are only played on the particular occasion that they're meant to be played. So agricultural rhythms are only played at planting time or at cultivating time or at harvest time. They're not played at other times. There's seasonal rhythms that are only played at the end of the rainy season, for example. There are initiatory rhythms that are only played when young people are going through their rites of passage to become adult, and they're not played at other times. There are rhythms just for a particular caste. The blacksmiths, they have their own secret society and they have their own rhythms and songs and dances. And the blacksmiths are the ones that created the djembe because they have the tools to be able to carve wood. So there's such a connection to life and the earth and nature and life cycles. I don't usually find that too much in pop music. Like I said, it can be there. Like the best artists, my favorite artists, yeah, it's there, and that's why I still love them. But yeah, this is a whole different level.
I've seen, I guess it was on YouTube or something like that. There was a film, it was years ago, just a really young child, like a 3-year-old, who was the son of a master drummer. And I mean,
Hmm.
this kid is unbelievable on the drums. And I'm like, see, you can, it's like, this is just, it's what he's heard his whole life. And it's
Hmm.
just there. I mean, you can feel it. It's like it's just there in his body. Um,
Hmm.
and it's just amazing. So it makes me think of what you said. Also, my own djembe, which was gifted to me, told me this was so interesting to me. Um, he told me that his name was Ubuntu, and I was like,
Hmm.
never heard that word. What does that mean? So I went to look it up, and I discovered what it meant, and I was like, wow, that's amazing. And that is, it has a lot to do with my intention in the world. And I would hate to speak to what that means because it's very multi-layered, and I wouldn't do it justice. But it
Hmm.
has to do with community and individuality and how those two mix together just in a very brief. And Chuck, you may know what that means and have more. Do you know what that, have you heard that word?
Sure, it's a yeah, you're right. It is a profound word. The way I understand it, it says, "I am because you are."
Ah, yes, I am because you are.
Yeah,
Lovely.
and it's not in the same language group or ethnic group as where the djembe comes from,
Uh-huh.
but that's fine. I believe it's from East Africa.
Okay.
Um, could be wrong on that, but yeah, I've definitely heard that word, and it is a beautiful word. Yeah, I love that.
Well, it just was amazing to me that, just the drum had a name, it had a purpose. It feels like a purpose was built into the drum, and it
Hmm.
was a handmade drum.
Hmm.
It was made in Africa, and so, I don't remember which part of Africa right now. I
I had heard of that word. There was a documentary where they were interviewing different coaches of different sports, and they were interviewing Doc Rivers, who was the coach for the Celtics in the NBA,
Hmm.
and they they were really struggling to get to like the precipice of getting to the NBA championship. And he's an African American guy, and someone from Africa had reached out to him and shared this concept of Ubuntu with him, and she made it very very clear like this isn't a concept, it's a way of
Mhm.
being. And so essentially, the way he applied that to the team is you have to put the team before yourself. And the way that we're all going to become more successful and reach our end goal in reaching a championship is by putting the team's needs before our own. Which is, and especially in an NBA market, it's very sort of, what can I get, from the organization, how much money I can get and pad my stats and that kind of thing. So all of the players in this year that they won the championship sort of all agree that they're going to put the team's needs before their own, and they actually won the championship that year, which was really cool. So it's just an example of that concept, or not concept, way of being sort of applied in a Western culture.
When that happened, when the drum gave me its name, it made me think of the, Tibetan monks who come over and, do the sand mandalas, and how
Hmm.
they're very, very focused on a specific idea. It might be peace or connection or whatever, and that is built into the mandala. And that's what I was thinking. I was like, I would love to know, like, how this drum was built. Like, where was it built? Who built it? Did that person have this in their heart as they were building the drum? Was it just part of the community, and so it was built in, because that vibration was there? I mean, I just don't think it was, there was a consciousness that spoke to me through the drum, and I just thought that was really amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful.
So many levels to music and vibration.
Hmm. Well, yeah, so in Guinea, they don't say that they play the drum.
Uh-huh.
They say they make the drum speak.
Yeah, that's
Mm.
right. I've heard
And the
that.
word is djembe fola. So fola is to speak. So a djembe fola is someone that plays so well that they can make the drum speak.
Mm, yeah. I remember being at, one of your drum camps, years ago in the mountains, Chuck, and I
Hmm.
was just kinda wandering the hills a little bit while you guys were playing, and it was just amazing. I mean, the whole experience of, because you could hear the drums throughout the mountains, and, to be in that setting, so such a powerful earth connection, and then hearing the drums at the same time as I was connecting with nature in that deep way. I don't even know how to speak to that. It was very, I think that it brought me into a sense of what, I think in the Hasidic lore is called Bria, which is, a world in which one experiences oneself and as like just, um, universal, like the universal self. So you experience yourself and yet also the oneness with the universe. So
Mm.
completely who you are, and at the same time one with the universe. And I think that it really elicited that inner experience for me when I was in the mountains that day.
Mm. So that reminds me, yeah, being completely who you are.
Yeah.
uh, there's a documentary that I've been watching a little at a time with one of my classes, and it's on my favorite djembe player from Guinea. His name is Famadou Konate, and he's 84 and he's
Mm.
still alive. He's the number one greatest still living, djembe legend. But there's a place in the documentary where he says, we all play this music, we all love this music because it lets us be who we really are.
Mm,
And I just, yeah, I've been carrying that in my heart for the last couple weeks since I heard him say that.
yeah.
And that's, yeah, I just love that.
Chuck, I'd love to know just from your experience, like what do you personally experience differently, let's say playing on a drum kit, for a rock band versus you're with a group of, you know, 6, 8, 10 djembe players doing polyrhythms. Like what's the difference in your personal experience when you're playing?
Mm. What a great thing to think about, and reflect on. I haven't played drum set in more than 15 years. And then I sold my drum set a long time ago. I just wasn't playing it anymore. Um, when I was playing in a rock band or playing in a country and western band, a couple of things happening for me. One was I want to be good. I want to play well. I want to really honor this song that I'm playing. I want to support the band. So there was a level of expansion there. And yeah, there was a focus on me. I'm the drummer in the band. So yeah, I want to do a good job. And it was early on in my career as a musician. I didn't have, the years of experience that I have now. So yeah, I have more confidence now. But I don't know that. I think, yeah, as I shared in a previous answer, there wasn't a connection for me to a depth. There wasn't a connection to the depth of the earth or to nature or to ancestors. Um, and again, I was very aware that it was entertainment. So it was fun for a lot of people. But there just wasn't the same knowing that we are all collectively together in this experience. I don't know if that's a good
Mm,
way to say it.
yeah.
So when I play now, it's still very personal. And yes, be a good, I want to be a good musician. I want to play well. But there's a way that like I think I described it as being part of something greater, something larger.
Mhm.
There's a way that I'm taken by something. It's like I'm placing myself into this portal, and I don't worry as much about, am I going to play well? Am I going to play correctly? I just know that I'm in this kind of tractor beam, and that together we're all having this expanded experience. And that's what's going to attract people. It's not like the popularity of the artist that wrote this song, or that this song is on the chart top 40 or what have you, because people aren't even going to know the name of this rhythm, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But there's something so alive in it, in that polyrhythm, in that simultaneity, in that expansion, um, that we're all having to both play our part and listen to each other and listen to the whole at the same time. I think it's that energy field that really attracts people, and they'll come and dance. Oh, little kids, we have a class. My Tuesday night group in Marietta, we meet in East Cobb Park on Tuesday nights, and we've been doing that since COVID. I wish we had thought of it years ago. But little kids come up, and their eyes are so big, and at first they might hide behind their parents' legs because they don't know what this energy is, but they will come around, and they will stand and then just look at us, and then they'll start bouncing. That's really, really gratifying because they don't know what it is, but they're connecting with it at a really deep level, and I always love that.
Chuck, didn't you take drumming into a place that works with autistic kids at one point? Am I remembering that right?
Yes, not only that, the first drum set student I ever had was a teenage boy named Adam who had autism. And he was at the Gables Academy School, off of Ponce near Moreland. I think they moved out to Stone Mountain. But that was my first drum student. I was like, I don't know if I can teach a teenage boy with autism, but okay, let me try. We'll see how this goes. And his parents bought him a starter drum set, and I did lessons with him for years, which it was fantastic experience. There was a school, now closed, in Midtown called the Orion School, and Oh, I wish I could remember her name. Maybe it'll come to me in a minute. It's been years since they closed, but this mother had a son, not with autism, but with, a learning challenge. Maybe it was ADHD. She went around to Atlanta to the different schools that might help him, and she didn't find any of them satisfactory. So she started her own school, which is pretty amazing. And so I would say there were anywhere from 30 to 40 students there. And they had me come in doing drumming sessions. I can't remember if it was once or twice a week. And there were kids with some dyslexia, autism, ADHD, different learning challenges. And I learned a lot doing that. But that was also very fun, very high energy. And it really helped a lot of kids, come into their bodies. And fortunately, I'm really, really accepting and patient. And I will say, there's nothing here that you have to get right. So you can't get anything wrong. So we're
Mm.
going to have an experience of rhythm together. And I still do that in some of my adult groups now. I've been working with Ridgeview Psychiatric Institute in Smyrna for a few years, working with Skyland Trail, another treatment center, and then also I've done this. No, I guess I haven't. But Peachford, I'm in conversations with Peachford right now to also bring therapeutic drumming to their program.
So, is this a good place to maybe kind of jump in a little bit to how you brought drumming into your family constellations, into your healing work?
Sure. And you have a specific question, or you just want me to kind of generally talk about it?
I mean, yeah, I think if that's good, just generally talk about it.
I think mainly the way we use it now usually is in the middle of a full day seminar after lunch break. We'll do ancestral drumming as a way to recharge the energy field, to help raise people's energy level, because it's an intense process
Mhm.
and it takes a lot of energy.
Yes.
And then you have a lunch break, so you're getting a little logy anyway. And so we use it to, re-energize the group, to recharge the field, and then to, we do some invocations at the beginning of the day, but then we will also again remind the ancestors that we've invited to come and help us. We still honor you, we're respecting you, we're still inviting you because we still need your help. So we'll do that in the middle of a day. And then occasionally in a constellation, this didn't come up Saturday, or I don't know that it's come up, Dan, when you've been with us. Um,
Mm-mm.
but sometimes the person working, working their issue, they will be able to open up to a certain level. And then as facilitator, I might have a sense that there's another level that they might still be able to drop into, but they're just stuck. They're at this place where they've been able to see something new, take in something new, a new image of a family member, but there might be a deeper place they can drop to. And so I may get a drum and very gently and quietly start to play just a very simple, very repetitive pattern, and I'll just intuitively be guided to. I'll just tune into that person and play what I feel might help them soften their defense and open the heart a little bit more, and be able to have a little bit more compassion for themselves, for their soul that chose to be born into these particular circumstances, as well as, who else in the family they're in conflict with. And that can be effective. So I think those are the two main ways that we use it, in a 3D way.
Mhm.
How did you discover family constellations? Was that through going through the Barbara Brennan School of Healing, or did you find it thereafter?
It was a little of both. They did use it. I saw it a few times, probably in a small class process. They didn't name it, but I knew this is something really interesting and really powerful, because they would ask someone, in the class, would you mind standing in to be this person's father, for example? And then they might bring in another person to represent a different family member. and it was powerful. And I didn't know what it was, and I just thought, okay, this is another, approach that they're using to help us, in our healing. And then when I graduated, it's a 4-year program if you go through all 4 years consecutively, and it's deeply life changing. And I just knew I needed time off. I didn't think I wanted to jump into another program right away, so I took a year off. And it was almost 2 years that I heard about a family constellations workshop in Florida, being led by Peter and Jamie Faust. And I'd met Peter at the school one time. He and his wife, Jamie, had been teachers there, but they had also left the school before I studied there. And I was drawn to it. I've always been drawn very intuitively to the things that I want to study or the workshops that I want to attend. Even if someone I really respect says, oh, you might want to look into this. This is fabulous. If I don't resonate with it, I'm not going to go right away. But this came up, and I just got a big yes. And so I went, and I had a profound healing with my mother's lineage that blew my doors off.
Mhm.
And you come out of Barbara Brennan school and 4 years of healing, and there's a time most people go through where they think, like, wow, I am really something. I think it's just part of the template of the school. And I'll just share this anecdote to reinforce that. Um, when I started the training, which was a year after that first workshop, I was so impressed both by Peter and Jamie and the way they held the work, and the method, that I just almost immediately said, like, this is it. This is my next thing I'm going to study. Um, so I did the first module. I'm going to say it was in the fall of 2010. And about a week before that, I'd been in Italy with my dad and my older sister on a kind of a family ancestral trip. None of us had ever been to Italy. And we went to the village in southern Italy where my dad's parents were born and where they grew up, where we went in the church where they were baptized, where they got married. It was really powerful. So it was on the way back from that trip that I went to the first module of training in Boston for family constellations. So that was just a perfect combination. Well, when I was in Italy, Kelly went to Florida to the same place for a family constellations workshop with Peter and Jamie. And she sent me an email, and I got it when I was in Italy, and it said, "Oh my God, I see what you're talking about. That was so powerful. I want to do the training too."
Mm.
And we'd been together for almost a year at that point. And it was pretty daunting to me to think, wow, that would be a huge step, because it's very exposing,
Mhm.
to do your profound healing work in front of your beloved, and she's going to do the same in front of you. But the way I decided was, I said, I've said yes to everything in this relationship so far. I'm not going to say no. Like that would be a change, and I don't want to make that change. I'm still going to say yes. So I know this is a long, circuitous answer to your question.
Lovely.
Okay, good. So yeah, that's how we started. That's how we got into it together. I think there was another piece I was going to add to that, but right now I can't remember what it was. So I'll just stop
Well,
there.
could you speak to how it's been for you? I mean, how was it for you guys to move through the school together and to do this work together? How do you feel like that's impacted your relationship?
Profoundly.
Hmm.
I mean, we'd both been married before. We both had, some idea of what we didn't want in marriage and what we did want. And so I think, we were very fortunate to meet each other when we did. And to do this training together was just a blessing. It was really perfect. And then that's what we did. Um, Kelly would do her work on her, you know, father's lineage, and I would just witness, and I would see, what it was that she had inherited from that lineage. and I would do my sibling work, and she would see, in me what my inheritance was and what my family patterns were. And so, yeah, it was just very mutually supportive of each other. And I think one of the great takeaways is, in any relationship, you are going to experience conflict.
Uh-huh.
That's part of the gig. It's going to happen. What family constellations helps with, it lets you really understand that it's not just you and your partner
Yeah.
in this conflict right now. you know my family's attitudes about money, that's what I brought into the relationship. And when you're in conflict and you're in stress, it's those oldest patterns that are going to rise up to protect you. And so we were able to really integrate the training that way and hold it that way. And when we still go into conflict, thank God, we're able to be more conscious of, who all is speaking through us
Mm.
and where we're coming from, and how we can hold that together and move through it and work through it, as best we can in the moment. So that's a real blessing. And I'll just briefly say, um, we got married right at the end of our first year of training. In fact, our anniversary is coming up next weekend as Memorial Day
It
weekend.
is.
Amy Bears, because you are our
I
minister.
was your minister, yeah. I think of you guys
Thank
every
you.
Memorial Day.
Yeah, well, we think of you too. Um, so in our training, this was at the end of, this was the last thing we were going to do Sunday morning, and then everybody was going to disperse and go back home. They had pre-planned this, and I don't know that Peter and Jamie told the class. There were about 20 of us, but they had Kelly and I stand in the middle of the room and face each other, and then they asked us, I think, to call out the elements of consciousness that would be in our marriage.
Mm.
For example, money, um, in-laws, sex, arguing, children, vacations, whatever we thought of.
Yeah.
And every time we named something, another person in the circle would stand up to represent it.
Mhm.
Mm.
So we had this circle of, I don't know how many people, 12 or 15 people around us. And then Peter and Jamie and Kelly and I just kept looking at each other. And then Peter and Jamie said to the people in the circle around us, slowly begin to rotate around them and randomly say what you're representing.
Mm. Wow.
So we were in this literal vortex of partnership and marriage energies, and it was really intense. And I found that as long as I kept looking at Kelly and just stayed with her, I was aware of all these other things, but I could stay in the center and centered in myself and stay with her. That was such a great training. Just, I mean, that whole thing maybe took 15 minutes, but I still remember it now.
Chuck, can I ask a quick question? And it's a little bit of an aside, and we'll come right back to the family constellation because there's so much I want to explore just
Hmm.
in that specific topic. But how do you feel like your relationship with Kelly changed before you got married and after going through the actual marriage?
Mm, wow. Um, this sounds like such a paradoxical answer is coming up for me first, because I want to say I'm more humble, but there's also a little bit of pride in that.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, but I do feel good about being able to be more respectful of her, exactly who she is, everything that she carries in life as a person. And we get our first examples of marriage from our parents, and that's what we know. So I'm not saying that my dad was disrespectful, but I think I've carried that a little bit further, successfully, into being respectful of Kelly exactly as she is. And we're very different people. I mean, I think that's fine in partnership and marriage. It's learning how to really honor and respect those differences. I think when we're attracted to somebody initially, many times they carry something that we want, that we feel like we lack,
Mhm.
we feel like we don't have. And it's fantastic. We're so excited to be around that energy, but it's so different from our base, vibration, that after being around it a lot and very intimately, it can start to drive you crazy
Mm.
because then it's too much, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Kelly is very high energy, loves to do and build and create and manifest. And I sometimes say she's like the Energizer Bunny in that way. And that's who she is. She really is. And it's so wondrous. And I am much more devoted to one or two things in life. And I don't need to keep finding and discovering different new things. I mean, djembe music will take me the rest of my life, and I will not come to the end of it by any means.
Mm.
Whereas Kelly gets into something new and she's so passionate about it, she goes all the way into it. She'll be with it as long as she is, and then the next thing comes in and she turns to that. That is so different from me, and it made me nuts at times, until I came to accept that's who she really is. She's not doing this to make me crazy. That's her essence, that's her nature. And now I love it. Like, she does it and it's her, and fantastic. I'm so glad that you are in a pickleball league and you're taking lessons, and you bought a pickleball pitching machine and you're going out and practicing. Like, that's the level she gets into it. And she loves it. And it's and a whole new community she connected with that she would not have if she didn't do that. So that's just one example, a recent example.
Yeah, and Kelly had, been on a very conscious, path of growth and healing and evolution before you guys met, right? You both had been.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, she has a background in academics, and she has a PhD, and she was a professor, and she had her own moment. And I'm not going to speak for her. I would rather she talk about it, but she had her own moment where she found that was not going to be an authentic path for her.
Mhm.
They, there were certain expectations that were going to require her to play a role and a part that was far too small for who she is.
Uh-huh.
And she had her own dramatic moment of awakening and awareness. And she went into Outward Bound, the
Yes.
wilderness education program, and so got immersed in that she had to become an instructor. And she did that for 5 years. She has background in Buddhism, quite a few different things, and she's been a full-time educator now for I want to say getting close to 20 years, which she loves.
And I'm pretty sure that, they took some of the kids to Tibet a number of years ago. Did they not do that?
Yeah, she did. She was part of a program that I think was based in Colorado. It's called Shoulder to Shoulder, and they did international cultural exchange and service trips. And she did get to go to Tibet, and she's also a wilderness first responder, and that was another one of the qualifications she had to bring to that community and to those kinds of trips. And yeah, that was really powerful and amazing trip.
Yeah, I remember Kelly brought me back, she was so kind, she brought me back some prayer flags, which I'm looking at right now because they're hanging outside on my back porch.
That's great. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
So Chuck, if you wouldn't mind, I'd love to, for anybody who's hears the word family constellations and they're sort of, trying to get a grip on what it exactly it is we're talking about. Um, and I thought maybe could combine it with some of the insights that you had on healing the mother wound, which sort of led into the healing that led you to be able to be with Kelly, I think, in the fullest expression of what you guys have now. Maybe just talk about sort of what, generally speaking, what that constellation looked like as a way to sort of tee it up for someone who doesn't know what it means, and, maybe sort of the insights that you gained from going through that specific constellation.
Mm. Just going to sit with it with just going to sit with it for a second to see how
Sure, take your
much,
time.
Yeah.
personal experience in that. I guess I'll start out generally saying, one of the many things I love about this healing is that it's very respectful of everyone in the family, period. End of
Mhm.
story.
Mhm.
Regardless of their actions, their behaviors, what they've said, the choices that they've made. And that by itself may sound difficult or not easy to accept at all until you imagine that when you try to respect somebody for their actions, it doesn't resonate until you think about what family system were they in that formed them, that may have led them to make the choices that they made.
Mm.
And you can keep going back in a lineage, and that's the approach of family constellations. How do we find the origin of this pattern in the family? Because sometimes you can see it, generation after generation. Sometimes it skips a generation. Um, but usually, the ways that we work, 2 to 3 generations is really all it takes to find, the origins of what got stuck, what got inhibited. Why did the flow of love and life force get held or restricted? If you think of it as flowing in a channel. So yeah, it's been years of training and practice now, but I've come to first assume that there was love somewhere. It just went awry in the family. And what are the circumstances of that? Can we get to that? And if we can we do the healing at that generation that wasn't able to be done by those people? And when we can, even if we can do a piece of it, that's when things can move. So a lot of compassion can be created, but it's hard work. It's really strong medicine.
Mhm.
It's not easy. And I think that's what was really life changing for me, was to see I'm never going to change anybody else in my family, but what I can change is how I carry them in my heart. How do I carry that family member? And if there's any part of me that's still in a child consciousness that wishes some event had been different or some person had been different, then I'm still tied into that young, pure child, innocent longing, which is beautiful.
Yeah.
And Dan, I think you heard us say this a couple times, in the work. It's not enough because we're not children now; we're adults now.
Yeah.
So it's from the adult level of understanding life and understanding reality as it is that we can have more adult strength to accept I'm not going to get what I wanted as a child. I'm not going to get, what I idealized. And I'm going to begin, I don't know how, but I'm going to begin to try to accept that. So that's kind of like the overarching one overview of what the healing is. It's what can we do to see somebody in the family differently. And I have a lot of compassion for people who, are in a painful place with the circumstances and events of their family experience. And I've been seeing in the last year or two more people writing and talking about just complete family separation, just disconnection. Um, I think there's a different term they're using, but right now I can't think of what it is. But someone's written a book on it, and there was a review, maybe in the New York Times, um, and it's yeah, I feel how painful that is, and for some people that may be a good solution for them. I there may be healing in it for them, but just in my experience, I feel like there could be more healing by not doing that, by not just deciding I'm not going to have any relationship with my family.
Yeah.
Um, and the reason I say that, I mean, personal experience, one, but also what I know is that when we do try to disconnect from family, yeah, we're trying to ameliorate the pain of something that happened. But there's a family lineage, there's an ancestral lineage behind our parents. And if you follow it all the way back, you come to the origin, you come to pure spirit. So if we disconnect from our family lineage, well, we're potentially disconnecting from that. And I don't want to do that. So, and then maybe going to make kind of a leap here. The deepest level of healing in family constellations is going even beyond acceptance of what was done, or what was said, and the choices that were made, and coming to a really powerful place, if possible, it could take your whole life, of agreement, the healing level of agreement. I don't understand this part of it. My soul chose this family for me. My soul chose for me to be born into this particular set of circumstances in this place on earth, in this era. And that's the mystery. I'm not going to understand that intellectually, or I'm not going to understand that as a personality. But it takes a lot of trust too, to trust that your soul knew something more than you, and your soul decided this is where you're going to be born, and this is the experience you're going to have. So it can really let you take more adult responsibility. Okay, my soul agreed to this, so I'm part of this too. I'm not, and yeah, I'm gonna get out of the victim mentality, or the victim archetype, and say, okay, I had a part in this too, as a person, as a personality, as Chuck. No, I wouldn't have chosen this. It was really difficult, but I'll just trust that my soul knew better than me. There were things I needed to learn about, virtues I needed to gain through this experience, and I hope I'm doing that.
Mm. And that's where you talked about the soul agreements this past weekend, right?
Yes, that's the
Yeah.
soul agreement. We all make these soul agreements to be with our marriage partner, to be with our love partner, to be with our parent, to be with our sibling. Um, and they don't all last through an entire life. You may have a soul agreement to be married for this many years, but not any longer.
Mm.
But it's still a soul agreement.
Yeah, and I mean that kind of speaks to something I was going to ask you to speak to, Chuck, about. Like you can come to a place of recognizing and honoring the soul agreement, and just recognizing your alignment with that, and yet also in um, this life to choose not to be around, for example, a dangerous person, a person who is threatening to your life or your well-being in some way. That's my experience, and I'm wondering if you would speak to that from Family Constellation's point of view and from your point of view.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's no good healing in maintaining a, in-person relationship with someone that's harming you.
Yeah.
So I'm not recommending or suggesting that. And I'm not recommending condoning any harm or abuse that's done. But again, this goes to the inner work that's done. How can I hold that person in my heart in a different way? So in family constellations, we call when you're still in that place where you wish something had been different, or you're still agonizing over the pain that happened. That's we call that an entanglement. You're still in a younger consciousness that's resisting what happened. I know it's really, really hard, and it can't happen very fast. It can take time, even years, when there's been abuse and harm and there's a trauma situation associated with it. So yeah, we are always watching a client to make sure they're not into overwhelm and getting overwhelmed by the trauma of what happened. So yeah, sometimes there needs to be physical separation, but yeah, I just don't. It's hard for me to imagine what that would be like to try to quote unquote end the relationship with a family member. It just, in my experience, it just doesn't compute.
So I'm sorry, I got a little bit confused between because you were saying, yeah, I thought you were saying absolutely. There are circumstances where you can't physically, continue to engage with someone who's harming you. And then you said something about I can't imagine um, not being in relationship with a family member. So I didn't quite hear the distinction. I didn't quite understand
Mhm.
how that fit together. And I'm imagining some other people listening might have had my experience and not been clear either. Can you clarify that a little?
Mhm. Yeah, let me try. Yes, you can change the circumstances of how you are in the presence of that person or not, and even like create a boundary that says, I can't even talk to you right now. But from what I've been reading is people have been talking about just, cutting off from their family, from their parents, from a sibling. So this healing is really about how you carry the family member inside or how you carry them in your
Hmm.
heart. And so the healing work then becomes what made that person be that way? What did that person experience that made them act in a way that was so difficult or harmful to me? And so I'm still in an energetic and emotional and heart and soul relationship with that person at that
Oh,
level.
so that's what you were
But I'm
speaking
not.
to was the heart and soul relationship, not
Mhm.
necessarily
Right.
okay, thank you for that
Yeah.
clarification. I thought that's what you meant, but I
No.
wasn't sure, and I wanted everyone to be able to understand what you were trying to communicate. Yeah,
Mhm. Yeah. Thanks for the
yeah.
clarification. Yeah. And sometimes, in the abstract, it it gets hard to talk about if you're not talking about a specific, example.
Now, my experience with family constellations has been that when, you're in a constellation and like you spoke earlier, Chuck, to inviting someone to hold the place of, a family member, a father, a mother, a sibling, whatever. And my experience of that has been that that person really seems to, it's as if they somehow embody those characteristics when they stand in for that, and that just makes it a very powerful thing. Would you want to speak to that?
Oh, that's what I wanted to ask.
Mhm.
I'm so interested in this part. Yeah, being a representative in the
Yeah.
constellation.
It is, yeah, it is really powerful. And I'll say, we had 3 years of training in this. The first year of training, you work through all the elements of your own family consciousness. And you're a representative in, dozens of other constellations for, the classmates you're going through the training with.
Hmm.
In the second year, you go through every one of those same elements again for yourself, while at the same time learning how to be a representative. And you get coaching on that from the teachers, from Peter and Jamie. So they'll give you some feedback, sometimes in a constellation, because as a training group, they may, pause and talk about the dynamics that are happening. So the like with a lot of things, the more you have done your healing, the more you've healed more of your family dynamics, the easier it is for you to be a clean, just open
Hmm.
vessel, for somebody else's family
Hmm.
member. Or maybe like the hollow reed is a pretty good
Hmm.
image. And so yeah, you're chosen. Sometimes you're compelled to stand up. You don't know this person. This person is a stranger. You don't know anything about them, but they ask for a representative for their aunt, and you almost find yourself getting pulled out of your chair. You're going to stand up. This is something you resonate with. And so the way we help set it up at the beginning of a constellation, we invite the representatives once they've been chosen and they've been named by the person who's working their issue. You are Jason Andrew Johnson, my brother, and then they're placed into the space. Once all the representatives at the start are placed, we invite those representatives to just breathe, relax, and know that there's nothing to do. It says this isn't about doing. And you really got to be careful not to think you're going to help this
Mm.
person, because this isn't about help. This is about being truthful of what you're experiencing, the impressions that you get. And it's also not about channeling. It's really just about leaving all your ideas behind and just being open to the presence of this other person. And the more you practice it, the more you do it, and the more you've cleared your own entanglements with your family, the more clearly you get impressions of these other beings, whether they're alive or deceased. And at times for me, I actually get physical impressions. There have been times when I get a pain somewhere, and if I'm asked, to report what my experience is, I might say my right knee is really hurting. And it turns out whoever that person was, they had an injury in their right knee at some point.
Mhm.
I've stood up to represent somebody with mental illness, and that's pretty intense. And sometimes, like, just my body
Yeah.
shakes. And it's not about, you're not playing a role. You're not a character. You're just holding an essence, and there's an alchemical process. And when all of these energetic elements come together, that's when the conditions are set up for something to move that hasn't been able to
Mhm.
move. It's really dynamic. Um, but it's not easy being a representative. Sometimes we had somebody Saturday. It was their first time. They were uncannily good at it. Just very naturally stepped into it. We were so impressed by that. Other times, only a few times over the years, but somebody, what happens when they stand up to represent, their own unresolved material gets
Mhm.
touched, and then they start speaking from that place, and we have to watch that as a facilitator, because if what they're saying doesn't make sense, then we have to start to ask them, is this what you're perceiving as a representative, or is this something from your own
Mhm.
life? And then they can't be a good representative, and so with respect, we'll ask them to sit down, and we'll get somebody else to represent
Yeah.
so we can do that.
And that could be a really tough thing for someone to do, even just making the distinction, wow, am I what's the difference here? Is this coming from my own material, or is it, something that's coming through me as an empty reed? I
Hmm.
could imagine that being a difficult question for someone, not necessarily being sure.
Chuck, I actually do experience it fairly similarly to what I would call channeling in like a ceremony setting, and
Hmm.
there's a few um, pieces of data that are the same. Like for example, um, like whenever I'm doing channeling in a ceremony, like it always comes through like my left arm, and the left side of my body tends to like just do its own thing, like someone else is moving it, for example. And there's a lighter version
Hmm.
of that that happens in the representation. Also, it's very, very clear distinction when I'm becoming a representative for someone else. The feelings I have, like my temperament, like on Saturday, I was a representative for someone, and like I felt a very different temperament. Like I felt much more like
Mhm.
a different sort of like level of like aggression and anger that just wasn't present, and that really had sort of no other basis other than the fact that I'm connecting to the spirit of this other person. So I guess how would you describe the difference between being a representative and because I know there's a lot of different, maybe perhaps misunderstandings or ideas about what channeling is, but I guess if you maybe can sort of discern that line for us of how you understand it with respect to the family constellation work.
Mm.
Mm. I'm not a channel, and I haven't I haven't experienced that. I would say, I've been in the presence of many times people who are channeling. Um, I guess for me, when I stand to be representative, I have no intention other than to support this person's healing.
Mm.
That's it. And so I'm just open. And again, having experienced it so many times and having had coaching and guidance and feedback from our teachers, um, yeah, I know when I can do that and just be clear. And I've really come to trust it. I don't question what's coming into me. Um, I do remember, especially the first year, I just wanted to be a good representative, and that's part of my wounding, like
Yeah.
being
Yeah.
perfect. Like, oh, I want to do a good job at this. So yeah, I was able to slowly and gradually work through that. So yeah, I just absolutely trust it now.
Yeah.
But I agree with you many times. I think this is what the best actors are able to do.
Mm.
And just a quick sidebar, there are people who use family constellations to coach acting groups. And I would love to do more of that. I haven't done it, but I would love to be
That
part of
sounds
that.
fascinating.
But I yeah, I feel like I don't know exactly how you described it, but it made me think of the times when I've stepped into a representation and I feel a way I have never felt before. I don't I don't ever feel like this. I remember a time um, standing in to represent someone who had had some multiple bouts of mental illness to the point where they were institutionalized, and they were also partying really heavily during that several years of their life. And when I stepped into that, I felt this urge to party, and that's not me. I remember being so energized and so turned on and just looking around going, "Let's go, people." And it was fun for that moment. And yeah, I had enough experience with it to where I could just hold the energy. I didn't need to act it out. I didn't need to do anything with it, just to hold it in the constellation. It was an element of the constellation.
Those are great examples that you've given, Chuck. Thanks. I think that clarifies a lot for people who might not have done a constellation before or witnessed one. I think that's super
Mhm.
helpful.
Okay, I have one more question about representatives because I've noticed the same in my first and the second workshop that I've done. Um, it almost like I guess you could say it's a parallel to like when you're playing music with someone and someone's out of time. In that same way, if there's a representative and it's someone who's like clearly like projecting or acting, or there's something that doesn't feel authentic from the spirit of the person they're representing comes in,
Mm.
and then it sort of like throws off the experience. So I'm just, and I guess you did mention like how you might intervene and you might ask that person like to say less, or you might even like go ahead and swap that person out. But I guess what I also want to comment on outside of just handling that instance is how much trust that you have going into a workshop of people that you don't know, and people that may or may have only done the work never or one or two times, and are playing such an integral role to bring truth and authenticity to what's happening through the work of the family constellation. So it's such an element of trust that goes in, with people that may have not, done the work, and to the degree, like you said, how clear is there, are they to be a vessel, to be an authentic representation of who they're representing.
Mm. Yeah, I think that my answer for that will go back to one of the baseline principles of family constellations, that everyone and everything is included.
Mm.
So, if it's a person that's never done any spiritual work before, never been to a healing workshop, they come in, they've got a place. And, we're going to give them a respectful place there. And I'm going to trust if the person working their issue sees that person and asks them to represent a family member, there's something guided in that, and that's supposed to happen. I don't
Mm.
feel like I'm going to warn, the person working, like, yeah, you understand that person's never done this before. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to trust that that's what's supposed to happen. There've been really interesting. I've seen other facilitators work that I have so much respect for, and I remember, I think we were maybe in a hotel conference room, and they brought in the rolling cart of refreshments too early. Right? We're in the middle of a
Yikes.
constellation, and like hotel staff, like, yeah, opened the door and brought in, the tea, coffee service or whatever it was. And the facilitator was so relaxed about it and actually made it an element of whatever was happening at the
Wow.
moment. And it
Yeah.
was right. It just made sense. Or sounds outside, a siren
Uh-huh.
or something. And
Yeah.
they'll find how, like, that's an ancestor, like, asking to come in or something. I don't know if that's the best example, but those are the kind of things that I'm thinking of now. So,
I think it's a great example.
okay, great.
Yeah. I know that in my sessions sometimes because I work mostly by phone and, things will happen, like the sirens come in at particular moments, and it's clear, like, my client will hear it and laugh.
Hmm.
"Well, there you go." Or Puck, my dog, will start howling at the train, you know?
Right, right.
And it just blends with exactly what's happening. I mean, it is really amazing. And that's not family constellations work, just to be clear, but I mean, it's still there's just something that happens, with that.
Sure, you're engaging a level at which, there are elements that are needed to be recognized and
Yeah,
brought in, and then that's what's been missing to help with the movement, that needs us to get us to the next stage.
yeah. So, Chuck, I'm curious, like, I know that you and Kelly have a little farm now, farm or farm-ish,
A little
and I'm
urban
wondering
homestead or something.
a little urban homestead, and I'm curious how you, see that as, sliding in with your work, your purpose, your values. I mean, I would imagine that that fits in there somehow, and I'm just curious what you would say about that.
Hmm. Um, well, yeah, it's too long a story to go into because we had been gifted with a yurt, and we were so excited we were going to put up the yurt and it was going to be the healing center that we wanted on our property, and it just didn't work out.
Mm,
But at the time, Kelly and I were in some conflict because she was ready to make the garden of her dreams, because we moved to this place in 2020, right when the pandemic was starting. So maybe 2 years in, Kelly was just ready to start her garden, and I still wanted to build the healing center. So that was a deep conflict we were in. We really had to work through that. And I'm so glad that she persisted and started working on the garden. It is amazing what she has created. I, contributed some labor, but it's her design, her vision. She built irrigation system for almost everything that's growing here. It's just the hours of work that she's put in, and she loves it. So our friend Sherry Wheat, who Amy Bear, she did,
yeah, no, Sherry.
yeah, she's a landscape designer and she did some consulting with us.
Uh-huh.
And she said, the first year the garden sleeps, the second year the garden creeps, and the third year the garden leaps.
Oh, wow, that's
And that's
beautiful. I
what we're
love
in.
that.
We're in the third year, and it is amazing. Like last year, we had a lot of vegetable beds, and just not that much grew. And there's so many different factors, talk about an alchemical process. We have so much growing now. We have lettuce, we have spinach, we have kale, we have strawberries that have come in. We have asparagus that are already done. Like those are usually the first things that come up. We have different berries that are coming in now. And on the way are tomatoes and peas and onions. Oh, we've had broccoli. We've already eaten some broccoli from the garden. So I think like the foundations of the energy field of our property had to take time to settle
Mhm.
and harmonize. And I think this is the year when they did, because whew, what a change. I mean, we're going to have so many blueberries in the next few weeks. Um, and then I started with chickens the year we moved in, because it was a pandemic and nobody was going anywhere. And I've been wanting to do chickens for a long time. So there was no reason not to. So it's gotten a little out of hand in the last year. And I've gone up to as many as 18 birds at a time.
Wow.
And we are right now at 15 adults, and two chicks that just hatched. One yesterday, and there was an additional one there this morning, and there may be a couple more that come in today. I don't know, but it's the first two clutches that hatched was exactly 21 days, and today's day 21. Since Linda Ronstadt, our best mama hen, has been sitting on those eggs. So, and we
Linda
inherited her
Ronstadt.
from friends, so she already had her name. Um, but I feel so good about the garden and everything that's growing this year. I mean, I was into it before, but this is an everyday, it's just it's a fulfillment of something. But I give Kelly all the credit because it's really her vision. She's really the engine that made it happen. And this is the first year it feels like we're really doing it together. And yeah, I'm really enjoying that. I think she would probably say the same thing.
I think we all want to come over and have a big communal salad with you guys. You made me hungry with all the
The salads that
wonderful.
oh, I'm not the biggest fan of kale straight. There's got to be other things with it or sautéed or
Yeah.
something. But the salads that we've made with strawberries and slivered almonds and like a vinegar dressing, a little blue cheese or something, and some protein. Wow, those have been
Yeah,
amazing.
that sounds delicious. Chuck, I have one more question for you. This is actually the last one that I had put on the page. So, you look at couples nowadays, and I feel like it's very seldom that you can find two people that are very aligned spiritually, much less, have something that they share together that they can do professionally and that touches, that touches the lives of each other personally, like the work that you guys do with the family constellations. So I'm just wondering what it's like to have a partner where you can share so much about yourself that's so important for each of you.
Mm. It's beautiful. It's challenging. It's rewarding. It's inspiring. It's ongoing work for sure. I came to accept that a long time ago. Um, and it's just so it's really satisfying. Like it just yeah, I know that we're really good partners for each other, and I don't know that there's a perfect person for each person. But yeah, actually, one thing that Peter and Jamie taught us to say is, "You're the perfect partner for me,"
Hmm.
and that's
Mm.
something that we practice saying, to each other. Um, yeah, it's been a huge blessing in my life, and yeah, I've grown a lot since we've been together, and I expect I'm going to grow some more. I mean, just basic stages of life. I'm in my early 60s now, so there's subtle changes that are coming in my level of energy and just my physical body. So that's a new stage of life I'm going to be entering. I don't know if it's what would that be, my last third if I live to be 90. But if I do, I've got 30 more years. So yeah, I'm looking at that in a different way. Kelly's a little bit younger, so she's not quite at that stage, but um, yeah, thank God she is still the Energizer Bunny, and um, I get all the benefits of that.
She's the Energizer Bunny farmer.
Yes, yes, but yeah, I will never be
Yeah.
bored.
So, yeah, I had mentioned to Dan that my hope that we might be able to interview Kelly one day too, and I think that the listeners are going to be fascinated by. They'll be looking forward to hearing from Kelly. I think after hearing
Absolutely.
from you.
Oh
So,
yeah, you should definitely do that.
yeah,
Awesome. Anything else you want to ask Amy?
I don't think there's anything coming to mind. Is there anything, Chuck, that you feel like you just want to touch on that hasn't been touched on yet?
Nothing's coming to me right now. I want to thank both of you. This has just been just what I hoped it would be, just completely free flowing and spontaneous. Great questions. And yeah, I know you had a plan going in, and you also, I think threw some extra questions in there, just to follow where the flow was going. So yeah, I appreciate you both, and I'm very grateful that you invited me to be part of this. So thank you.
Back at you. Thank you so much for being here. It's just been a fantastic a fantastic time. And I think our listeners are going to be very delighted.
I hope so. I hope it's helpful to somebody.
No, definitely. Thank you so
Yeah.
much for coming on, Chuck. Really appreciate you spending the time with us and going through everything. And just as a closing, just inviting everyone, if you're in a space to do so, just closing the eyes and coming back into the space of your body. And giving a moment of pause here for anything that has come up that has spoken to you, has resonated with you, has meant something, sparked interest in you, just to allow that to settle and integrate into your mind, into your body.
It just occurred to me, and I just want to throw this in before we complete our moment of kind of silence, because in the moment after mantra, one is meant to be silent and just allow the vibrations to settle into your being. And there is a felt sense of that happening. And given what we've been talking about today, I just wanted to bring that to your attention as you go into that moment of silence, listeners. And just see if you notice what it's like to sit with that moment after sound, after meaningful conversation, after connections.
And as Chuck had said on Saturday, feeling your field reorganize after stimulation and input.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And inviting a deeper breath in. And exhale out. Thank you to my co-host Amy and our special guest Chuck. Thank you all to the listeners for tuning in. Thank you guys so much for being here, and we'll catch you on the next episode.